I think we can move into this idea of how tokenization can make overseas investors money. And so maybe the first place to start is what are the main opportunities for investors in your opinion?
Well, I mean, first of all, I love the topic of making money, right? And this is an opportunity for international investors. So something that those of us here in the US have been very, very used to is having access to the US capital markets. They're well known in the world as the most stringent, as well as the biggest, the largest, and the best. Why? Because they have the most available products. Where do the biggest companies in the world like to go list? Even if they're not in the US, they typically choose Wall Street. It is the New York infrastructure, and the US is very happy with it. But internationally, it's not so easy to access. And that's one of the opportunities that tokenization brings to international investors. The ability to go ahead and reach international investors for even private placements in the US market is extremely difficult in the traditional way. You probably need to actually visit that country and try to identify and find investors manually. In this case, in the digital world, now investors from the comfort of their home, no matter where they are, whether they're in Japan or Senegal or in Belgium or in Peru, they can access US investment products that are tokenized simply from their phone, even in some cases. So I think that is one of the biggest macro trends of tokenization, because this will unlock a whole new pool of capital that actually US assets didn't previously access, which is actually new opportunities for US investors as well. But Kyle, let's get into some more of the benefits for international investors and tokenization.
Totally right. Just to build on that first point before we even go into the next one, I mean, this is something that you and I have talked about with our team and with a lot of the partners in the industry for quite a long time, but it's now no longer something that is in theory and much more in practice. You look at private companies that now are internationally participated in, like an INX or like some of these other private companies that have extreme followings internationally as well as domestically, but now you're seeing synthetic stocks as well that are taking the world by storm with FTX and Bittrex and now with the new one we just saw with Wall Street Bets. And there's now these newer opportunities. Mirror Finance is another. There's so many great opportunities for investors to get access to these investments that before they weren't able to, and now it's a real thing that those people could do. So I mean, not only that, but I think that the other side, the cool thing about US-based assets, before we even look at maybe the flip side, is that with an international investor, in a lot of economies where Bitcoin and crypto has been attractive because they couldn't rely on their local markets or their local currencies, the idea of A, being able to invest in US assets, but B, to get paid in US dollar denominated dollars is really, really valuable as well. To get paid in a stable coin, like with Realty, for example, you get your 10% yearly return in dollars, and that can be something that's really valuable as well for an international investor to be able to put their cash and receive that in dollars.
Again, one of those things that Americans, we are quite used to this. We have one of the best currencies in the world. It's stable. It's the reserve currency. So we don't worry about these things. We don't worry about our capital markets not working, and we don't worry about our currency not working, but other countries do. In fact, it's a huge problem for them. So the idea that they could now go and invest in assets that not only pay out in a stronger currency that might be more valuable and at least more stable, but actually they can park all of their assets now into foreign assets, and therefore even some of their investments locally can now be protected under the same exact methodology. The world's reserve currency can now be benefited thanks to tokenization.
I think that's totally right. And really, when we take it a step further, we're looking at this global market, right? It's making one financial market instead of relying on such fragmented or segmented jurisdictions. And the really great value there is that, yes, you can get exposure to US assets, but you can also get exposure to any country's assets. Looking at Mount X, for example, that they have Canadian real estate properties to Mexican investors. And that's something that wasn't available to these types of investors in the past. So whether you want US exposure or you want outside of the US exposure, this idea of creating a more liquid market for these illiquid assets is really, really valuable.
It's huge. I mean, again, these are all new opportunities that investors, they weren't used to this. The idea that you could go and invest in a foreign company or a foreign asset, I mean, quite frankly, I don't know how many of us in America are used to something like that. That's coming to us too. But the point is, for overseas investors, this is a tremendous opportunity given potential currency risk, given the lack of access to public markets, given the lack of access to good assets and good investment opportunities that many people would like to be able to participate into.
So another one that I really like, and I think is also one that I think was great in theory, but now we've seen it in practice in a big way, is with El Salvador. So El Salvador made the news as they made Bitcoin their reserve currency, or a national tender, excuse me, which means that you can use it as currency. And in that time, since they've made it legal tender, there are actually, I was reading an article that there are more Bitcoin wallets in El Salvador than there are bank accounts. Wow. Because of the ease of creating wallet technology and the opportunity there. And so this idea of creating personal financial options for the unbanked and creating opportunities for those that really don't necessarily have the ability to do that, or it's just so much easier, even if you do have the ability and you just haven't gotten around to it, or even if you've dealt with banks before and know how frustrating that can be, recognizing the enhancements in leverage opportunities with collateralization and a lot of these other pieces are really fascinating, and ones that I think that international investors are able to take advantage of even more so than U.S. because of the more, the more hands-off, regulation piece.
Completely agree. I mean, look at it from another perspective. Why, from the U.S., why have just access to 300 million people when you can access now the rest of the over 6 billion plus people beyond that, that's around a globe, available to invest in assets all around the world internationally. It is not just into U.S. assets, in fact, that tokenization will benefit. Again, this is just cross-border benefits. The ability to just create a more globalized financial ecosystem will yield many benefits for everybody around the world.
And I think, on to your point, we'd be remiss if we didn't point out the fact that this will absolutely benefit local investment options in high growth areas internationally that now U.S. capital can now fuel into. So the same types of deal flow and investments you may be seeing as an investor in a different country now have a whole new access to capital, which, if you're already invested or if you're working in those different industries, you can really receive a great opportunity by leveraging newly accessible capital, whether it's from the U.S. or from other jurisdictions that maybe wasn't able to leave the country as freely. And that, again, just continues to build on that global network.
Completely. I mean, if there's one principle that people love in investing, it's diversification. And again, what's better from a diversification perspective when you can expand your scope from just your local potential assets to now assets all around the world that you can invest in? That is real diversification, if I've ever heard of it. So the new opportunities that tokenization are going to bring are also really endless.
I think that's a pretty good rundown there of the tokenization benefits.
I'm excited. I'm excited for everybody to get excited about tokens and to make money in tokens, more importantly, because that's the opportunity that is available today. And that's why we're going to see such a rush towards tokenization. If you're interested to learn more, check out the rest of the Security Token Show. Make sure you check out all of the other amazing content that's being produced on the Security Token Market blog, from our What's Drippin' newsletter. Check out our community on Discord, which is soon going to have the battle of the blockchains, bringing again many leaders from different blockchains to debate whether their blockchain is the best for security tokens or not. So very exciting stuff. And with that, Kyle, I guess you should say that you are reachable on Twitter and LinkedIn, right?
You know where to find us both.
Don't just check out the rest of our stuff. Ask us questions. We really do engage. We will answer you. We also love feedback. We want to make this show as useful for you as possible. And so,
like, subscribe, leave a comment, join the security token revolution, and participate in spreading the gospel to everybody. Throw that palm tree in your bio, your name, and we'll talk to you next week.
Happy tokenizing.